everyone forgets that the generation that comes next is equipped to face different problems than they did, right? And so why do kids these days seem kind of cynical, jaded, nonsensical? Well, because every emotion they have is monetized by marketing firms that are like masters of psychological operations.
For sure.
So they just treat like their emotions are the most valuable thing they have because their like excitement is monetizable. So they just don't express it, or they express it in completely obscene, abstract ways as a defense mechanism to the predators that they've grown up surrounded by.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sandbox.Space weekly podcast. This is episode 96. We are so close to 100. I can't believe it. I, of course, am your host, Chris, joined every week by Baby Girl, who's in my lap, Pumpkin, who's over there, and, of course, our fun members in the chat. And every week we do a special guest. This week's guest is Mike Geig from Unity, longtime friend, partner to GDEX, all sorts of stuff. How are you doing this morning, Mike?
You know, if I was any better, it'd be illegal.
Oh, damn, man. That's a place to be. That is a place to be. So, Mike, you have been, you are a principal advocate at Unity, but you're like one of the old school. You've been there, 11
Going on
years?
13 years.
Okay, I was going to say, I thought you were close to 11 or 12
August
years.
1st, 2013. So we're getting there.
August 1st. Okay. Wow, man. How the time flies.
How it does indeed.
Yeah.
Before VR, the VR renaissance, even like way back.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, I spoke about this, I think the last episode or maybe 2 episodes ago, we were talking about just the early days of Unity and how Unity democratized game development in a way that just wasn't available. And if you wanted a license to something like Unreal or, even then we went to, oh my God, what was it? Crytek, the CryEngine.
CryEngine, yeah.
And it was $500,000 to get a license for one of those engines, which was just completely, that's just completely ridiculous for a small studio, right? Like my entire annual budget isn't $500,000 back then. So
completely prohibitive. That's why Flash games were so huge. Because everyone could get Flash, and it was like, well, I guess that's what we do.
Yeah, totally. And I remember the big stink when Steve Jobs said the iPhone wasn't going to natively handle Flash anymore, and that sort of started the killing fields of the Adobe Flash technology.
It's funny to look back and realize how often I'm wrong about tech trends. Like I backed HD DVD over Blu-ray. I thought for sure that was going to death knell of Apple. Like I am just always wrong when it comes to trends.
Yeah, I think, you say whatever you want about Steve Jobs, but he definitely had an insight into just things that work and would catch on in a way that a lot of people just don't. And I think,
yeah.
No, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, if I had to summarize it, what I feel like he was really good at, and I don't mean this, I'm going to use a term that has a negative connotation, but I don't mean it negatively. He built a cult. And I don't mean that like negative cult bad. I just mean it was like you carry the Starbucks cup logo side out as a status symbol. Apple cult, right? People were fanatics about it. Like there was no stopping that engine. And he was just so good at building that. And so it didn't matter what they did. We're getting rid of headphone ports. And everyone was like, what the hell? And then now that's like the standard. We're getting rid of this. Everyone, what the hell? And now that's the standard. Just push through sheer zealotry.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people forget, like Apple, they pushed USB initially. They were one of the first computers to really use USB, and they also filtered out CD drives. And they did a lot of stuff. And one of the things that I think he was on the beat on, and I think the Adobe Flash was a part of this, is just the user experience, always being driven by the user experience and focusing on what makes a good experience. And like Flash, there's a lot of stuff on there. There was a lot of Flash games, but he was right. It was clunky. It was messy. It was slow. And the vast majority of the content made in Flash was ads. Now, fast forward, I think he died in 2011, maybe 2012.
Wow.
And fast forward to now, I was just talking to a friend yesterday about just like how borderline unusable the internet is now. It is just filled with pop-ups and ads and all sorts of junk. And now it's AI. I wasn't going to talk about this, but now I'm on my soapbox. So here we go. But
Let's hear it.
I sent out a email on I think it was a Monday for GDEX asking people like, what do you want to see at GDEX? Like what kind of games or speakers or whatever. And I just used a simple Google form to get the response. If you log in to it to look on it on your phone, then the first thing that pops up is a little introduction about Google Gemini. So I'm just like, I don't care. I have to click out of that. Then Gemini takes all of the responses and then synthesizes them into its own framework, which is not formatted to fit the screen. So you have to scroll over and then click X to get rid of that. And on top of that, all it's doing is synthesizing the responses, which is exactly what I want to read anyway. So
You don't want the synthesize, unless
Yeah.
it's like massively long or whatever. But yeah,
yeah, it's just if somebody's like, I'm like, hey, what do you want to see at GDEX? I don't need an AI's interpretation of what Mike Geig needs to see at GDEX. I just want to see what Mike Geig says, right? And it's just
Right.
it's one of those things where I have to go through all of these points to just get to the information that I want to get to. And I don't know, man. Technology, I love it, but yeah.
It's things. Even I know now we're on the AI train. There are a lot of areas of my day to day life that simple AI tools that I've either made or that I have found make things easier, right? And actually allow me to be very productive. And then there's a lot of areas where I waste a lot of time, and I feel like there's a lot of hype. And so it's a trade-off. Like, yeah, using it to summarize what people say is great, but you still have to read what people say to like make sure there's no hallucinations in there and stuff isn't, greatly misconstrued and things. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's
You're
interesting.
probably more on the AI train than I am. I pretty much don't use AI for anything in my
Yeah.
day to day. I try to I like to create everything. So this sounds weird. I have this thing. I've had it since I was a teenager, and I call it the Hannibal Lecter effect. And I think we all should be more like Hannibal Lecter, not in the eating people part, but
Oh,
in Silence of the Lamb. Well, maybe I mean whatever.
maybe.
In the end times, if the apocalypse is coming, we'll see where we get, right? But Hannibal Lecter was stuck in this room for years and years, and he wasn't able to have access to anything. So everything had to be stored in his brain. And I feel like we're offloading all of our mental storage into the computer, into our phones, into AI. And I've noticed, for example, that like I use GPS like all the time now, and I have a very poor mental model of the city I live in. So I've stopped using GPS. Like I watched my sister's house. She was gone for vacation, so I was house sitting. I was like, I'm gonna use GPS once to get to her house, and then I'm not gonna do it again, so that I can build that mental map out of the city I live in. Because otherwise, I don't know where anything is. And last week, this is the question for you, back to the sort of democratization of game development. I know Unity is working on some pretty advanced AI stuff, including, I mean, I think and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think the general gist is to sort of lower the friction level to start getting into games development and start being able to create content for folks that want to make games. So there's, new AI models and features that are being added to Unity. I mean, is that the next step in democratizing game design, or what do you think?
I think there's a few different parts of it, right? So, and we're going to be showing some more stuff around GDC time, but I can talk about it now. There is a few different pillars of work that I find that our AI tools are really built to help people with. So there is like the learner, like, why should I do this thing? Why do I do that? Hey, I had this error. What does this mean? And I think instead of using like the generative AI that's going to produce the code for you or produce the end results for you as a learner, you should just be asking the AI, how would I do this? And then do it yourself, right? Allowing the AI to kind of instruct you without actually doing it for you. I think that's important. Otherwise, you get like the equivalent of what was like script kiddies back in the early 2000s, late 90s, of people just copying code from the internet but didn't really know what it meant. But then there is the workflows that just save some time, right? Like there's a project I opened up this morning, and it was the URP sample project, right? Like, so if you know Unity and you open up the hub, you can grab our universal render pipeline sample, which has like 4 different scenes in it, all meant to demonstrate different things, whatever. And I only wanted one of the scenes, the Oasis scene, and I was like, I don't really want to create a repo with all of these other assets in here. Like, it's taking up space. And so I opened up the AI assistant and I said, locate all of the assets not referenced in the scene, in this scene, and move them into a folder called unused. Hit enter and boop. Now there's a folder unused, thousands of assets in it. I just deleted the folder. Cool. I cleaned up my project in moments. And that's not a thing that I really wanted to do myself. I could have tediously figured it all out. And I've created scripts in the past to do that, but I didn't want to find one of the scripts and make sure it still worked and all this other stuff, So it was just like, cool, bam, great. Now I can move on with my life. And so there's that pillar. And then there's this like, I want to creatively prototype an idea really quickly or build some editor tooling really quickly. And that's great. And the idea there really is not that I'm going to sit down, I'm going to type a prompt, and boom, I have a game, and now I'm just going to put it on the internet, right? Like this whole AI slop that everyone's really worried about, like just a flood of AI slop, which is absolutely going to happen no matter what. Don't kid yourself. It happens now anyway, right?
Yeah.
But really, the idea is that you get the rudimentary game roughed out very quickly so that you can spend your time or your team can spend their time on actually making the game nuanced and interesting and unique. And so those are kind of like the three pillars I see there. But for beginners, for learners, man, it's great. Especially like I use it all the time. When the other day, I was like, C# lambda expression. I was like, I almost never use it. And I was having a hard time remembering like the syntax of it. And I was like, but why do we do it like that again? And you would think I would know this. Lambda expression has been around forever, but it's just one of those things. So I'm like, explain lambda expression to me again. And it was like, he explains. I was like, right, okay, that's what that does. Cool, thanks. Or what's the difference between these two method calls? Because they seem to do the exact same thing. And then it listed out the reasoning. I'm like, cool, thanks. So yeah, I find for learning or even just refreshing your knowledge of something, the AI stuff is really helpful.
Okay. I'm with you. I'm going to be a little curmudgeonly here for a second because
Totally.
I think that is I'll call it the excuse, use whatever word you want. It doesn't matter. That we've been using for a lot of technology for a long time, which is like, oh, this thing, we have a phone that has the world of information in our pocket. We can get the answer to anything we need. But humans inherently don't use it like that, right? I think that there's the problem between like the expectation and the real world result. And one of my concerns,
Yeah.
I was talking to Roger Crofis about this, professor, game designer here at OSU last week. But one of the things that we've been noticing is that the AI has been replacing, or we'll say augmenting in a more positive way, a lot of the freshman and junior level positions, which is removing those intro opportunities for that learning experience that you're talking about, because these corporations are not necessarily hiring those positions anymore because they feel they can be offloaded to AI, which is not a problem. It's a problem for the people that need a job, but it's not sort of a massive problem right here as we sit. But in 5 or 10 years, it will be, because we're going to have this giant buffer zone of developers, artists, whatever, that didn't go through a meaningful onboarding learning process. So I'll give you an example while you ponder this. So Ashley Birch, the voice actress, she's done a bunch of stuff. She's a voice actor for Aloy and Horizon Zero Dawn.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So they got into a thing, Guerrilla Games and her, a little bit, because now this was a leak. This was according to Guerrilla Games, this was never intended to come out into the wild, but they created kind of like a demo thing using her voice and her sort of motion capture movements as like an internal demo for a Horizon thing. And that ended up getting leaked. And she's like, I had no idea this existed. They never asked me about it. They never asked me to like sign on anything about it. It wasn't intended for commercial use, but that was a problem in and of itself, that she didn't get
everything
asked.
gets leaked.
Yeah. She didn't get asked to do it. But then she mentioned, she's like, one of the things I'm seeing right now is that AI is being used for a lot of the voice work that new voice actors would generally do. So it would be a lot of internal stuff, but it'd also be like a lot of barks, basic commands, action scenes, like all that kind of stuff. And she's like, all of those new voice actors are not getting a chance to get studio time, to work with a voice director, to build up their portfolio. And it's creating this world where all the new voice actors just don't have a real opportunity. Now, I don't think we want to build a world like that, but how do we kind of circumnavigate around something like that, given the new technologies?
Right. Well, it's interesting. First off, I've been internally just sort of amused myself with the phrase that you used. Tell me any tool that could not be said, but humans don't use it that way.
Yeah.
It's like, yep. It's like dynamite. It's great for making mining better. Sure. But humans don't use it that way. And here are bombs, right? Like that's true of any tool. It's weird because AI is not hitting every what do I say, career or creative area equally, right? I think AI is 10xing developers, even junior developers. But folks who are like musicians, folks who are voice actors, they're in a bad way. Like my son loves playing music, and he was like, I want to make music professionally, like as a composer. And I'm like, I support you. I can appreciate that. But I want you to understand the realities that we're in right now is that I can create anything you can create with AI very quickly. And that sucks for you. And I understand, but I need him to think about this realistically. Some tools just make other what do I say, career paths a little bit more obsolete. It's like what photography did to painters who painted like advertisements and things like that, like what printing did to writers and scribes and so on and so forth. And that sucks and it's scary, right? And certainly my hope would be that at some point governments of the world become a little less corrupt and a little bit more tech savvy and are better at protecting people from technology. Fingers crossed, anything
But
can
humans
happen.
don't use governments that way.
But humans don't use it that way. That's correct. Man, I am going to like write that quote out. That's a great one. But it's interesting. And I'm even seeing what like Cybernet Surfer 7 is saying here in the chat. I will point out, right, one of the things that he's talking about is like learning requires friction stuff. Everyone learns differently, which is something I learned when I was a teacher. So some people will learn very effectively with AI as their guide, reducing that friction, and some people won't. And I think I think everyone, no matter who you are, no matter what you're doing, should spend time to look inward and figure out what kind of learner you are, and then set yourself up for the best success. And maybe AI is it, maybe AI is not, right? But I think that's everyone's individual journey should be, what kind of a learner am I? Can I watch an AI do a thing and then I can do it because I learned by watching? Or do I have to do it myself? Do I have to figure it out? Do I have to get steps? That sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No. I was just gonna say, but in terms of like not getting the studio time, the generating the barks and stuff like that, I completely agree. Like every time I use any AI tools, my thought always goes to the audio folks, because like I can make just about anything in video games except for audio. I no skill there. It's a complete blank spot. I always joke around that video game development is design, art, and programming. That's the trinity of video game development. Oh, and audio, and then that's just sort of tacked in way over here.
Yeah,
So,
which is a shame, man. I'm replaying Cyberpunk 2077. I've beaten that game probably 8 times now. I play it like once every year or two, and because I'm streaming it this time, I've been using some like nicer headphones, and I'm really noticing the sound design work that went into that game in like a really
it's so
meaningful
important.
way. Yeah, I think I think you hit on a lot of things. Like the friction in learning, I think is really important. The way I kind of talk about that is I think about when I was in pre-med and you studied a lot constantly, like all the time when you were in pre-med.
Oh yeah.
And one of the things that I found really valuable was actually studying with people, not so that they could give me the answers, but ultimately, like, you want that friction because that's how you learn. But at some point, you just get stuck a lot of times, and you're not quite sure what to ask or where to go, or, And so instead of wasting an hour trying to get unstuck, you could ask a colleague, you're like, oh, hey, I'm trying to figure out this part. Like, what is this? And then they don't have to give you the answer, but they can be like, oh, have you thought about this? Or you need to like look at this way. And you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And then it gets you unstuck and you can start the learning process again. So I could see like AI potentially offering some value in that.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, too, there was an article, I haven't had a chance to read it, came out a couple days ago about how AI is replacing a lot of executive and management level positions in a way that people hadn't
Sure.
predicted yet. So this could be something
Well,
that,
executives, they look at landscapes and trends and they make decisions based on large data. Like they are prime for AI to replace. Now, I think a lot of companies, a lot of people are reluctant to replace human beings at a higher level with AI because you can't hold a computer accountable. And that's ultimately where you need a human being to choke if something goes wrong. And so that I think one of the biggest things executives bring to the table at any place is they're fireable if they screw up, which I don't know if that's a major thing or not, but it just seems to be the way of like, you can't really fire a system after it screws something up. So,
sure.
yeah,
Well,
but
we'll talk
but
about
certainly-
firing executives here in a second. But my worry with AI, one of my worries is like, because you had a lot of great examples. You talk about like, photography. A lot of people will use the car and buggy example. And I was like,
Yeah.
the thing is, like, even with the painters being replaced by photographers, and then I forget what the other example you used was, but those are still people replacing people using a
Certainly.
technology. I think the issue that a lot of us are worried about with AI is just the economies of scale that AI is capable of doing. And so a computer could replace 10,000 people, and then we're in that problem. And right now, I think Caleb, Cybernet Server on there, Caleb mentioned he's not sure if they are 10xing anyone. There's been a lot of research. MIT did a really great study recently that's showing that all of these sort of corporate AI programs are like pretty much total failures. It's like 90-95% of them are just absolute failures.
Oh, there's a lot of like junkware for sure. A lot of them are money grab because there's money out there that unless you have AI in your title, no one's investing in you anyway, right? Which is why the video game industry is seeing such a dry spell in terms of investment. That's its own thing. We've seen these technology bubbles happen with VR and blockchain and IoT, like these come and
IoT,
go.
yep.
Yeah, but certainly, again, like I said, AI is not impacting everyone the same, right? So for me, I can personally say that AI tools have 10x my work, guaranteed. I produce demos significantly faster because there's a lot of just little things like I've got to add a character controller. Fine, just add a character controller for me, right? Like so I can just focus on the meat of what I'm trying to do. Or I've trained an AI bot on the way that I write, so that if I need to just quickly write some copy, I can just throw out the bullet points and I've had this thing ingest, thousands upon thousands of things that I've written, and I'm just like, write that like me. And then bloop, and then I read it and I go, yeah, cool. That's exactly how I would say it. But it's saved me so much time. Now I can just pop it, into whatever communication channel and stuff like that. Like there are little areas where AI can really increase your workflows, but there is no like, this tool is going to do everything you need to do and completely speed you up. You have to be smart about it. And furthermore, you're absolutely right. People replacing people versus technology replacing people. I agree. And that terrifies me. There's a great book called End of Work that came out in like the 90s about this very concept. And ultimately what it boils down to, and not that I'm just some big fan of AI, right? It concerns me just as much as it excites me. But the real problem is capitalism, and people don't use it that way. And once you start using anything to replace people and you start devaluing people, that's problematic regardless of what the tool is. So I think ultimately, again, this is where we would hope, governments would protect humans with some common sense and stuff like that. And maybe they will. I don't know. But the way humans use things can be pretty scary.
Absolutely. I think you've hit it on the head there. I think I tend to be a pretty optimistic guy, and I think that we will, like, ultimately governments are a reflection of what its population is willing to tolerate and accept. And I think that we as people are beginning to get in there, because I think it's funny, Elon Musk comes out and he's like, oh, we're heading towards a Star Trek utopia. Grok is going to help lead a Star Trek utopia. I was like, okay, cool. So there won't be billionaires anymore.
Because Star Trek starts with a utopia and builds off of that.
There's no billionaires in Star Trek, and there's no like unequal distribution. There's no unequal distribution of resources, and I think ultimately that is the fear, is that whatever AI, and again, this is also a point worth mentioning, is like when we talk about AI, like high level here, we're talking about sort of like a high level generalized AI, which is different than like a visual generative AI, which is different than like a lot of the AI slop crap that's in the corporate world right now, which isn't even really AI. And Apple did a white paper about this last summer where they're like, yeah, there is no AI right now. Apple's like, it's all just really fancy pattern recognition machines.
Oh, yeah, it's not actually AI.
Yeah, there is no real AI in existence right now.
No.
But I think the fear is once somebody, if it's even possible, and I think it probably is, ignoring like the moral implications of this, once we crack the AI nugget, the real question is who controls that and what are they going to do with it? Because
I'm sure the best, most qualified people.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. Because that's ultimately the thing is like, I am totally 100% down if we had AI that's able to handle a lot of our routine work and particularly get like a lot of blue collar and menial labor work out of some of these like dangerous positions. I'm all for that. Right. And if that opens up, takes us from a 40-hour work week to a 20-hour work week, like,
well, that's the problem right there. Like, first we have to universally agree that everyone deserves to eat and have a place to live. And until we can agree on that very, very basic fundamental thing, if we can agree that everyone deserves to be happy and healthy, then AI and all these other tools, and great, that's fantastic. But it doesn't seem like we can agree on that.
yeah.
But we're getting way off topic there. I got all sorts of opinions there.
Oh, totally. I think that we do. I actually think that the vast majority of people do agree with that. I think we've just the powerful or wealthy or however you want to put it have positioned it in a way that because nobody wants competition, right? Like that's the whole point of having anti-monopolies is monopolies because it's weird. A monopoly should be the most effective, cost-effective, best product deliver mechanism availle, but never
people
are.
Don't use it that way.
Yeah, but people don't use monopolies that way, right? Yeah. Well, I'm gonna put baby down for a second. Baby, say hello. I think obviously the word is still out. The jury's still out on what AI is going to get us, right? And we may find
we'll land somewhere in the middle, like we always do.
Yeah, it may end up being like all the other alternative technologies you mentioned, like VR and blockchain and IoT, where we find out, well, we're either just not technologically there or, I think VR probably right now is like, I don't know, 60, 70% of the way towards where we dreamed it could be 10 years ago, maybe.
Sure.
And blockchain's obviously having its own sort of issues right now, but I
personally believe blockchain is going to have its day because we will absolutely need new data formats in this world of AI. The ability to say, was this image tampered with? Was this image generated? Can you prove it? And blockchain peaked early with a bunch of garbage that ultimately people didn't care about, like NFTs and stuff like that. But ultimately, the ability to have data formats that are undeniably untampered with is going to be crucial in this age of disinformation, right? Like I think, the day of the PNG is rapidly over. As AI gets better and better at faking things that never happen and stuff, we're going to have to. We can't not and survive. So I think blockchain, we have yet to see where the real value of that is.
I think that's a really astute observation. It's kind of funny. We keep saying, history repeats itself. It's like history, it rhymes, When we were growing up, like the number one rule when we were growing up is that nothing on the internet's real, right? And then for some reason, we didn't learn that lesson. What I think ended up happening, to be honest, one, the technology obviously got better. So you've got, AI create. Yeah, you got videos now that there was a video this morning that I watched. I was like, is this real? And I had to like look in the comments and kind of double check to verify it was not AI, but it actually was AI. Even hell, did you see the Les Wexner attorney video the other day?
Mm-mm.
So he was in a deposition, Les Wexner, who for those outside of Ohio probably don't care about, but Les Wexner is a huge part of Ohio. He's the Wexner Medical Center is OSU's medical center, but he was being in a deposition about some of the Epstein file things, and during the deposition, his lawyer like kind of reached out to him and covered his mouth. And he was like, if you don't start answering questions in 5 words or less, I'm going to fucking kill you. This is what his lawyer said to him, the wealthiest person in Ohio, right? And I was like, my friend showed me that video. I was like, there's no way that can be real. Like, there's no way that is a real video. And it was, apparently. Apparently, that's the lawyer actually said that. So you just don't know. But so one, the technology's just gotten a lot better. But also, I think that, you know, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, like you and I did. And and we sort of learned about what was going on with computers and the internet as it was happening. So we could kind of see the process of these things. And so it was be like, okay, that's fake, that's real, that's fake. Now the internet is so ubiquitous that a lot of people, like, I don't know, like my parents' age, right, jumped on the internet, I'd say with any meaningful use in like the mid to late 2000s. They just haven't been trained on they don't have that muscle to identify the nonsense.
Right.
And so at this point, I think it's history repeats. We just go back to everything on the internet's fake until proven otherwise.
Well, and not to belabor the point, but I was having this conversation this past weekend with some folks who were talking about this cynical, nihilistic youth that we have these days, the whole 6-7 nonsense, brain rot, whatever. I think it's awesome, for one. I think it's hilarious. But two, like, I think people forget that, 6-7. I think everyone forgets that the generation that comes next is equipped to face different problems than they did, right? And so why do kids these days seem kind of cynical, jaded, nonsensical? Well, because every emotion they have is monetized by marketing firms that are like masters of psychological operations. For sure. So they just treat like their emotions are the most valuable thing they have because their like excitement is monetizable. So they just don't express it, or they express it in completely obscene, abstract ways as a defense mechanism to the predators that they have grown up surrounded by, right? Like when I write even like public facing things, I stop trying to do things like build excitement because I find that people respond with anger. Like, how dare you try to make me excited about a thing? I'm already emotionally taxed. I don't need this. So I'm like, okay, all right, I'll just give you information. If you choose to be excited, fantastic. So the youth, they're not different. They just have different defense mechanisms for problems that we didn't have.
Yeah, I agree. I find it really kind of sad, I guess, the number of times I've had to talk to people, particularly younger people, either on the campaign trail or within like the GDEX community, where I was like, you know, it's okay to like stuff, right? Like you see this like cynicism. Or people will talk.
They just won't let you know because that's when you've got your hooks in them. Yeah. Right? They're very guarded about it.
Yeah, totally. But I've seen a lot of folks where they'll talk about something and then you can see them get reserved. And maybe it's a defense mechanism, like you're saying, where like they start out with that initial thing and then they kind of they'll asterisk themselves for whatever back. And I was like, it's okay to like stuff. Like you're allowed to enjoy stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, totally. I think that. Also, something I've really noticed with people in general, but younger people, I think is both a response to the things you mentioned, but also kind of maybe the isolation from COVID, is that people are wanting to get back to real, personal, authentic experiences. And I'm seeing that more and more where people are like, they want to go out and do something, which I think is like great for like GDEX, right? People want to come out and connect with a Mike Geig in person. And I'm starting to see that kind of come back. So maybe the pendulum will swing. And the other thing that I do remind people, this sounds, you know, you didn't want to throw any shade towards Steve Jobs, but I don't want to throw any shade towards older generations. But the conceptual frameworks that younger generations have had to like deal with and think about is just far grander. So think about like media, right? Like think about media in the 50s and 60s, TV in the 50s and 60s compared to TV
3 channels
now. Yeah, it just the concepts, the storytelling, the meta structure of stuff. It just requires a lot more like thought and processing than it did. And so I think our youth, interestingly enough, are better prepared to handle a lot of these more conceptual issues. I mean, even like the Matrix, right? Like the Matrix is like, well, we get plugged in and we're supposed to be batteries for the Matrix. Originally, the idea was that we were supposed to be part of like this giant neural net. and each
This
human
cognitive sphere.
yeah, each human provided some cognitive space for the matrix, and people are like, oh, this is too confusing, like people won't understand it. Now, I mean, it's like every week there's an episode about jacking someone in and using their neural activities for some
Right,
nefarious
botnets.
yeah, exactly. And then there is a real thing. I know some people have an issue, but there is a real thing with up until like a little bit into Gen X. This sounds terrible, but like a significant amount of our population suffered lead poisoning, which had real physical and mental effects
Oh, yeah.
on our population. And now I think that there's just, you mentioned there's so much misinformation, there's just so much noise. It's like, how do you filter through
Yeah.
that?
And no one was autistic. You just had a weird uncle that was really into trains.
Oh, sure,
And no one
yeah.
really talked about it, right? Like no one was, it's like, this kid isn't hyper, doesn't have any issues. He's just, a bit of a spaz, right? Like all of these things like that we
Yeah.
understand now looking back.
These
So
things.
it's interesting how much folklore is based on like just neurodivergence that we didn't understand.
Yeah, no one was blind until we had glasses. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a bunch of really interesting scenarios that we're in, but I feel like I say we, like we as just a people, I think we're starting to come to terms with a lot of these like pretty heavy conversations, which I find interesting.
Yeah.
So let's jump into AI
Sure.
getting rid of executives. So literally, Phil Spencer this week left Xbox on February 23rd. So 2 days ago was his last day. Also, the head of Xbox, which was the sort of presumptive replacement to be the CEO of Xbox, left. And the new head of Xbox is from their core AI segment. So literally sort of the AI person is replacing an executive.
Literally taking their job. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm curious, like, Unity is tethered into the Microsoft Xbox system. I mean, you and our community, we did that Unity Xbox Roadshow years ago.
Oh, yeah.
As a partner. But Xbox is just, it seems like they've really lost their footing. The Xbox Series X and S are selling reasonably well. Like they're not like failures by any stretch of the imagination, but they're being outsold by PlayStation by more than 2-1 right now. And so it's like, one, I just want to kind of get your initial thoughts on the change, because Phil Spencer has been such a large part of Xbox for, I think, about 15 years or so, maybe even a little bit longer.
Yeah.
I think it was 2012 maybe he came in, so it'll be about 15 years. But then also, what does the future of Xbox in the games industry look like if there isn't an Xbox the way that we think about it? What if there is no console at all?
It's interesting because the console, it has been my opinion that the console doesn't generally make a lot of money. It is the gateway to playing the games, right? Which are what makes the money, especially when you get into things like Game Pass, which has been massively successful in terms of, that reoccurring revenue is way more valuable than one-off revenue. So to a company, especially a publicly traded company that has stocks and stuff like that, the revenue that you could show from someone buying a game one time or buying an Xbox console one time doesn't matter nearly as much as someone who subscribes to Game Pass, a reoccurring expense. So certainly I can imagine that the Game Pass things, subscription models, has more value, but without the Xbox, you don't have the subscription service. So I can't imagine Xbox going away in that capacity, though I do understand lines blurring a little bit between the PC and the Xbox. Like I have Game Pass, I play games on my console, but then when I go on trips, when I travel, I just install the same games on my PC and I play, right? And it's great for that. And so there is, again, value in that blended experience and maybe they're looking at new ways to build off of that. PlayStation has always just been a dedicated game console. And I view, like, in a weird way, if you took Nintendo's like vastly experimental gameplay mechanics, they're always cutting edge with weird input systems, and the Nintendo 64 controller, like what the hell even was that thing? If you were to take a Nintendo and a PlayStation and bring them together and merge them, you'd get an Xbox, because an Xbox is meant to be more of an entertainment system trying to do more things. And maybe that's good, maybe that's bad, but they've always been trying to unlock that multimedia experience with the Xbox. And so maybe that is a direction they're heading, using AI to unlock some capabilities there. Or maybe AI has nothing to do with it at all, and this person just happened to be a great candidate. I don't know. But yeah, it certainly is an interesting move for sure. But I think Microsoft really sort of struck gold with the concept of this Game Pass. And so that's probably where I imagine their focus or their support of that would be.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I think, though, it's important to remember that Game Pass. Funny, I was on a podcast with Colin Moriarty for my campaign a couple months ago, and I got reamed because I kept calling it Games Pass. And I was like, dude, I spend 0% of the time worrying about Microsoft's branding, Game Pass, whatever. Just Games Pass just feels better to me. But anyway, Game Pass exists because in the previous generation, Microsoft was, quote unquote, losing the console war to PlayStation, and they needed to come up with something that could be a competitive advantage against PlayStation. And so they had the, Xbox Live, and PlayStation has the PlayStation Plus, and Microsoft came up with this really great idea, which I think Game Pass was, I don't know if it is now, but it certainly was like the best deal in gaming for many years. Like just you were paying whatever 15, and then it went up to like $20, and now it's more expensive. But to be able to play anything you wanted at any time, like that was a steal. That only existed, in my opinion, because of the competition between PlayStation and Microsoft in that realm. That forced Microsoft into something new to be competitive, which then forced PlayStation to go back and revive and revisit their PlayStation Plus and make that a better product. So in that sense, like capitalism kind of worked for consumers, because we got, whether you are on Xbox or PlayStation, we all got a better deal and a better service because of it. I do have a worry that, and I've been seeing these rumors, talking heads, analysts, what do they know, right? But I've been seeing a lot of comments where Xbox may not even create a console. Because you're right, like you sell an Xbox and you maybe make $50 per unit, right? And you've got to keep all the upkeep and the warranties and stuff. The money's in the software. That's why consoles used to sell at a loss, because they just wanted to get it in your home.
Right.
But my concern is that if we drop down to just Nintendo and Sony, yes, they're both video game companies. Yes, they both make consoles, but they're kind of in their own.
They don't compete.
Yeah, they're in their own realm, and I worry that it might make both of them a little stagnant.
I'll say that I cannot imagine, and I'll explain why in a moment. I cannot imagine a world in which Xbox makes that decision. What I do hope is they make some better technology decisions. And by that, I mean, just call the next one Xbox 2 and the one after that Xbox 3. Naming.
Microsoft's
the naming
branding,
thing,
my God, man. It's
awful. I get the Xbox One X was a cool name because then the initials spelled Xbox. Cool. But it made it really hard to figure out which console it was that you wanted to buy. The One X, the One S, whatever. I really hope they simplify and streamline their offerings considerably. So how you used to spend a lot of money on a TV, right? TVs were pretty expensive, all things considered. And nowadays, a nice TV, which I guarantee is going to be a smart TV, which is the worst idea ever. Yes, please, let's buy a TV that gets slower over time. Thank God. But the reason smart TVs are so much cheaper is they're subsidized because they want to get in your home. Just like you said with the Xbox, they want to get a device in your home. And with the AI stuff, it's probably going to be all about your data. Would be my guess.
Sure.
My guess would be the Xbox has got to monitor all sorts of shit in your home and whatnot. Sorry, stuff in your home. And that's speculation. But if I'm looking at every other device in existence in my home, I'm thinking, yeah, that's a pretty solid bet. And there's going to be a lot of revenue for Microsoft in that avenue, to the point where why wouldn't they create a very cheap console? Why wouldn't they subsidize it? Why wouldn't they make Game Pass? Do everything they can to get you to want an Xbox, not because they're trying to sell you games, but because they want it in your home. just like smart TVs do and everything else, right? So
Sure.
I think the real skill of the future, and what I've been trying to like teach to my kids, is how to not get taken advantage of by a company that's trying to harvest your data, and to always ask yourself, do I really want this app to take funny pictures of me, not knowing what else they're monitoring on my phone at all times? I think that's going to be the real skill. But yeah, so I don't see there ever just being PlayStation and Nintendo. Microsoft would be giving away a huge opportunity if they did that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. There's thoughts that maybe Xbox, like Microsoft, will not make the Xboxes anymore. Maybe they'll do kind of what they're familiar with in the PC realm, which is they will have specs of what an Xbox is,
Yeah.
and then they'll license the brand out to an Asus or whatever Alienware or
Sure.
something to create. So you have your Alienware Xbox. That's a possibility.
Kind of like Android does, right, with their
Yeah,
phones.
yeah, totally. So that's a possibility. I do agree with you that I think that this Xbox idea, like play anywhere, and that's the thing is I don't. There's smart people at Microsoft, right? They're running the numbers.
Sure.
They're doing their projections. Like these people aren't fools, and so I don't have the behind the scenes data on this stuff. So maybe they're finding that the amount of software sales being sold directly through console is a small percentage of what is coming through the PC and the mobile and the other spaces. I don't know, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, what if Xbox is just like, all right, we're gonna have Xbox on PlayStation, and they have a separate store where you can have Game Pass on PlayStation. Like that could be a wild thing, and PlayStation
Yeah.
gets a little cut of the money that's purchased through that.
I couldn't imagine Sony wanting to go that route as a closed ecosystem, basically opening
Sure.
the gates up to a competitor. Like that would be insane. But I'm not a business guy. Maybe there's some case for it. Who knows, right? I'm notoriously bad at guessing anyway.
Yeah.
But it just seems wild.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't see that happening. But the reason I kind of bring that up is because Apple, Google, and then you had the Epic Store fight, where in
Oh,
Europe,
yeah.
both Google and Apple are required to allow other platforms on their platform, like other stores on their platform besides their app stores. So if that ruling then applies to other computer, electronics, then
Sure.
that
Yeah,
that
that would
happen
be
as well.
interesting though, because I mean that's a can of worms when you get into. I mean, phones are one thing because they're basically just these computers that have significantly a multi use case or a bunch of different technologies in them that allow you to do all sorts of things, right? But like if you were to say something closed like a video game console, if that applied to that, then would it apply to your refrigerator? Right? Could I sideload a different OS into a smart refrigerator? Does that apply to TVs? Like it starts getting
How else are
really
you supposed to
weird.
play Skyrim on your refrigerator, man?
Load up Doom on my fridge, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
No, I have no smart devices, appliances in my home. I've repaired appliances for a long time. I don't trust any of it. I buy old stuff and I fix it.
I don't either. My car, I have a new car, 2023 Ford Escape, and that's like 80% computer. And I do worry about all the things that could potentially go wrong. Right now, it's new and it's cool, but well,
Yeah.
I got to run here because I got to take the kids to the vet. But I am curious about. We talked very briefly about the Blue Point closure. So Sony bought Blue Point. For those that don't know, Blue Point was a porting studio. They did the Uncharted collection, Shadows of Colossus, but their big one was Demon Souls, which was a launch title for PlayStation. So they predominantly did PlayStation ports, but they were an independent studio. They got bought by PlayStation shortly after saying that they were working on their own title. And then
Yeah.
this week, they were announced that Sony is going to close them down. They have not done anything of that we've seen. The rumor is that PlayStation was forcing them to make some kind of live service game, which is not what Blue Point does. So just kind of quickly, Mike, I'm curious about we just went through like an arms race between PlayStation and Microsoft buying up tons of studios, including the largest one, Activision Blizzard, kind of in the world here. I think that was what, $55 billion, if I remember correctly,
Something ridiculous.
like the
Yeah.
largest purchase in video game history. So what are your thoughts on these? Like, I like seeing independent studios. I like seeing studios that can work and make funky stuff. And I do think it's a shame when these large studios buy up. I mean, look what happened to Rare, right? You could argue Rare's kind of back with Sea of Thieves, but that took 20 years to get there. Do you have
Yeah.
any thoughts on that kind of thing?
It's tough. I mean, so this stuff, when companies buy smaller companies and then ultimately end up closing them down or disbanding them. I mean, there's a couple of reasons that happens. One, the intention was always to buy up competition to get rid of it. That happens,
Yeah.
right? Softimage got bought up by who made 3D Studio Max and Maya?
Autodesk?
Autodesk. Yeah, there you go. And it was only through a court ruling that said they had to keep Softimage going for like a year or two, and then the moment that timeline ended, then they closed it, kind of thing. That happens, but I think a lot of times, and this has happened at Unity too. You buy a studio, you buy a piece of technology with the best of intentions, right? Like, we are going to do something with this. This is great, and then realities change, markets change, people's needs change, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, I have this thing, and I'm no longer in a position to do anything with it. And while it sucks to close it, what else can I do with it, right? Like, and so I can't keep it on the books. What do we do? And so then these things end up getting closed. It happened. Epic bought Fall Guys, and then ultimately shut them down when the markets got really bad. It's not, and I'm not to pick on Epic. Like, we bought Art Engine with the best of intentions to integrate this technology, and then things changed, market changed, technology changed, and we closed down Art Engine. I mean, these things happen in technology. It's scary. I wish people had long-term plans before making these purchases, but the realities are those purchases do make your stock price look better. I do also like to point out that sometimes, right, like, unless you're publicly traded and we're buying you out by buying a majority of your stock, kind of thing, or whatever, that's different. But if I'm going to the owners of a privately owned business and I'm like, we're going to buy you, and they go, okay, then part of that's on them too, like giving up their agency, their control of their business to make money. And there's no shame in that, right? Whatever. This is America. Go for that. But at the end of the day, you can't just be like crying foul if it gets closed, because you gave up control of the thing. Sure. So if you want to control your fate, control it. If you want to make money, kind of thing. But no, it sucks for sure, and it hurts to see when these things happen. But this stuff happens in the non-gaming space all the time, and no one ever hears about it. Mostly because people are way less passionate about non-gaming. Like, no one is ever just like, man, I'm really all about this tax software. Oh, I can't believe they shut this tax thing down. I really loved it. Right. Gaming is a little bit different, but it's hard to go through, especially if you're like really excited about a thing. But it is the nature of technology, and for better or worse.
Yeah, I hear you. I think for me, one of the things I hate most in the world is like a lost opportunity. And it seemed like Blue Point was on such an upswing, and you look at it and it looks like you see this where the big companies, like you said, they purchase a product, that product or service or whatever company, it gets absorbed into kind of like the bureaucracy of the larger company. And then that bureaucracy
just ground down to nothing.
Yeah. It doesn't quite understand what made it special. And I think Blue Point was special. I think what they did with those remakes were amazing. And I was very curious to see what they would be capable of creating had it not gone the way that it did. But we gotta run.
The thing is, those guys. Oh yeah. Sorry, and just one last thought. Like, those guys weren't all those people. Sorry, not to say guys. Those people weren't all executed, right? They're gonna go off and they're gonna join other studios or create new studios and get back to the creative indie work and stuff like that. Sure. So it's the talent is still there, and that's the thing to always remember is the interesting work goes on for sure, even if the studio name is gone.
Well, I'm going to see if I can get maybe some of the Blue Point people out to GDEX this year, maybe talk about
that'd be cool.
Their experience, because I think that would be really cool. But unfortunately, I got to end a little bit early because I got to get the kiddos to the vet. Mike, sure. I loved chatting with you as always. It was a great conversation. Great. Yeah. So everybody, also real fast, Mike and I are going to be at GDC this year. So if you're watching and you're going to be out in GDC, feel free to look us up. You can always send me an email at chris@multivarious.com. But this has been episode 96 of the Sandbox.Space weekly podcast. Real fast, Mike, is there any way for people to get a hold of you before I wrap up?
Sure. Either on social media at Mike Geig or through email, mike@unity.com.
Mike at Unity. You don't get those emails
I've been there a
anymore.
while.
Yeah. Again, this has been episode 96. Reminder, we do this every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern over on Twitch/TheGedex, and then we post the videos up on our YouTube channel. So feel free to watch there. But on behalf of myself, Baby, Pumpkin, everybody in the chat, and our special guest, Mike, we want to thank you all for watching, and I will see you next week.
Cheers.